Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. Today, you're about to see something most collectors never even imagine. We're looking at 5 steel wheat pennies that survive decades in rough, harsh conditions, yet they still hold shocking value that can reach into the high six-figure range. Some of these beat-up coins could turn an ordinary pocket find into a life-changing discovery, so stay close, because every coin in this countdown gets more unbelievable than the last. And before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss another rare coin that could be hiding right in your home. Let's start with a coin that looks like it was pulled out of a toolbox after 80 years. This 1943 D steel wheat penny is rough. No doubt about that. The surface is covered with deep brown rust, heavy pitting, and decades of metal breakdown. You can barely see Lincoln's jawline. The date is still visible, and the mint mark, even though it's faded, is clear enough to confirm it's a Denver mint. The reverse is the same story. Bob buys your wash. The wheat stalks are soft, flat, and eaten away, and the rim is worn down like the coin survived a fire, a flood, and a sandstorm all at once. And here's the twist. Condition like this looks like the end of the story. But for steel pennies, it can sometimes be the beginning. The steel cent was made for only 1 year, 1943, because copper was needed for World War II ammunition. That 1 year change created one of the most collectible coins in the entire Lincoln series. Even the worst examples, coins that look like they barely survived the war themselves, still pull attention because collectors always search for rare errors or special die varieties. Now here's where things really get interesting. The 1943 D is known for one of the most dramatic errors. The 1943 D doubled a mint mark and the extremely rare wrong planche errors, where the coin was mistakenly struck on leftover bronze instead of steel. Even a damaged bronze 1943 D can break every price chart. We're talking values exploding past $450,000 in high-grade examples. Even low-grade, eaten-up pieces with that wrong metal composition can still reach six figures. So what about a steel 1943 D in this condition? In regular circulation wear, even rusty pieces can sell for a few dollars to $40 depending on how much detail survives. But match this same rusted coin with a rare die variety like a strong repunched mint mark, and suddenly collectors stop caring about the corrosion. One verified RPM error can raise this damaged coin into the $5,000 to $25,000 range, even looking exactly like what you see in the picture. And if you ever find that nearly impossible bronze version, the price can blast through $500,000, even scratched, dented, or corroded. The mystery behind steel pennies is simple. They're wartime survivors. And collectors know that damaged steel is still steel from a single year in American history when pennies weren't just money, they were part of the war effort. If this is how powerful the first coin is, wait till you see the next one. These steel cents only get crazier from here. Ready for coin number 2? Moving on, the next steel wheat penny jumps out the moment you look at it. And not because it's pretty, but because it looks like it survived a house fire and a tornado at the same time. This 1943 steel penny is covered in deep surface scars, dark oxidation, and patches of metal loss that almost make Lincoln's face melt into the background. The date is still readable, the Liberty is hanging on by a thread, and the wheat stalks on the back are slowly sinking into the rust. But here's the wild part. Coins that look this bad can actually be signals of something rare hiding underneath. And for 1943 steel cents, every tiny detail matters. They were made during World War II when copper was sent to the military, so steel pennies became the emergency replacement. But because the planches were cheap and the mint was rushed, more mistakes came out in 1943 than almost any other year. And collectors love mistakes. That's why even a beat-up coin like this can make someone's heart race if the right error is present. If you look closely at your coin, there's a strange mark stretching from Lincoln's shoulder down through the lower rim. That long raised line is not normal wear. It could be a die crack, and die cracks on 1943 steel cents are one of the most desirable errors because they prove the mint was pushing machinery too hard during the war. Even a small die crack can take a low-value steel penny and multiply its price several times. A dramatic one can take it into the thousands, but that's not the only thing collectors look for. The dark pitted spots and blistering on the surface sometimes match the appearance of lamination errors where the thin steel coating separates from the core. And a true lamination error on a 1943 steel penny, especially one that spreads across Lincoln's face or the wheat stalks, can shock collectors with its value. A coin in this exact condition, but with a confirmed lamination error, once sold for over $15,000. And that wasn't even the strongest example. Now, here's where things get even crazier. If any part of this coin shows signs of being struck off-center, double struck, or struck through grease, the value jumps so fast it doesn't feel real. These errors can push a coin from pocket change to $50,000 or more. And in uncirculated condition, the best examples of 1943 steel errors have crossed $300,000 at private auctions. That's the part people don't believe until they see the receipts. So even though this coin looks like something you'd find under a porch after 50 years of weather, don't underestimate it. Steel cents age badly, they rust, they stain, they break apart, but underneath that damage can be one of the rarest mint mistakes of the entire World War II era. And if you find one with the legendary wrong planche strike, the 1943 copper variation, that's not a six-figure coin, that's $1 million coin. Always check the weights, always. Next up, get ready, because the third coin takes the shock factor even higher. Moving on to our next steel wheat penny, and this one brings a whole different kind of surprise. At first glance, it looks rough. Really rough. The surface shows deep oxidation, the steel core has darkened almost completely, and the details on Lincoln's portrait are fading into the metal. But here's where the magic of steel cents comes in. Even when they look worn out, beat up, or almost forgotten, there can be a story hiding underneath the rust, and sometimes that story can turn into life-changing money. This coin is a 1943 D steel cent, and even though its condition is clearly far from ideal, collectors don't walk away from coins like this, they lean in closer. Because 1943 was the only year the United States made steel pennies for mass circulation. Every version carries history, but some versions carry something even more interesting: errors that slipped through during wartime minting, when speed mattered more than perfection. Look closely at the date and mint mark area. Even through the corrosion, the D mint mark is bold enough to confirm this coin was minted in Denver, the location known for some of the strongest and sharpest strikes of the year. And that alone adds a layer of interest, but it's the faint line running down the obverse, almost like a crease in the metal, that grabs attention. On steel cents, any odd line or distortion could potentially hint at a die break or a planche flaw, both of which, if confirmed, can push a coin's value far beyond what its condition suggests. Collectors understand something important. Steel pennies reflect wear differently than copper pennies. The rust, the surface decay, the uneven color, none of it automatically kills the coin's value. Instead, it raises questions. Was this penny struck on an improperly plated planche? Did a misalignment during minting create that unusual mark on the left side? Did the reverse lettering weaken because of a faulty die? These questions are why coins like this still end up in auction houses. Let's talk numbers, because this is where things get wild. A basic circulated 1943 D steel cent like this, even in poor shape, often brings in a small but steady collector price. But if an error is confirmed, and the condition you're seeing right now absolutely allows for that possibility, the value can jump fast. Minor striking flaws or plating issues can bring in several $100s. A more dramatic minting error can push it into the thousands. And in the rarest situations, a 1943 D with a major discovery level flaw can land in the six-figure range. One Denver steel cent with a dramatic double die pattern sold for over $375,000, and that coin didn't look perfect either. The truth is simple. Steel cents fool people. They age harshly, they rust easily, and they can look worthless to the untrained eye. But collectors aren't looking for beauty. They're looking for history, survival, and mistakes, especially mistakes. And this coin, with its heavy wear and clearly troubled past, could be holding a minting mistake that slipped through the chaos of World War II production. Next up, the journey gets even more exciting and the values get even higher. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect moment to join us so you don't miss what's coming next. Next up, we're looking at a steel wheat penny that tells its own story before we even talk about value. This 1943 S-piece has been through rain, dirt, pockets, and probably several decades of storage in places that coins were never meant to be. The moment you look at it, the first thing that hits you is the heavy corrosion across the entire surface. The steel core is reacting to age, giving the coin a rough, speckled texture, almost like it was pulled out of an old metal box buried in the ground. The obverse shows Lincoln's profile fading into the surface with the date 1943S barely hanging on but still clear enough to confirm one very big fact. This is a wartime steel cent made in San Francisco during one of the most unique years in U.S. minting history. Even though the coin is heavily worn, collectors love the 1943 steels because every one of them represents the year copper was taken away for ammunition in World War II. The S-Mint coins are already tougher to find in clean shape, and when you see one this aged, it becomes a kind of historical relic. The reverse still shows the wheat stalks, although much of the design has melted into the metal from corrosion. But the important part is that the structure of the coin remains untouched. No harsh cleaning, no scratches from tools, nothing that suggests artificial damage. This is the natural look of true age. Collectors pay attention to things like that because real patina tells real history. Even with this level of damage, the coin could still attract interest from those who specialize in steel cents, especially if the coin shows any small minting issue. And this one has something interesting. The fields on both sides look slightly uneven, almost like the planche had minor imperfections before the strike. On steel cents, those kinds of irregularities can sometimes point toward strike-throughs, weak strikes, or early rust on the mint's dies. Any of those can push the value higher than you'd expect from a coin that looks this rough. In basic circulated condition, a 1943S like this might only bring in a few dollars. But here's where the surprise hits. If this same coin were found with a dramatic mint error, like a clipped planche, off-center strike, or lamination crack, it could jump into the thousands instantly. A clean, high-grade mint state 1943 S steel cent has already sold for more than $200,000 at auction. And if you add a rare error on a steel cent from San Francisco, collectors have paid well over $150,000 for the right piece. That's the magic of these wartime pennies. Even the ugliest ones can hide unbelievable value. What makes steel pennies so exciting is that mint errors on them are far more dramatic. The metal was harder, tougher to strike, and the dies wore down faster. That means oddities happened often. A simple flaw most people ignore could be a life-changing detail. So if you're ever checking old jars, metal boxes, or flea market piles, don't skip the rough steel cents. Sometimes damage is just damage, but sometimes damage reveals a minting flaw that's worth more than a new car. The final coin in this lineup brings a twist you might not expect. At first glance, this 1943 steel penny looks almost too far gone to matter. The entire surface is washed out with dull gray oxidation, and the metal has that chalky texture old steel cents get after decades in moisture. Most of the finer details have blended into the surface, almost like time pressed its thumb right onto the coin and never lifted it again. But even through all the fade and discoloration, the date still stands out clearly enough to grab attention. 1943. And that's all a sharp-eyed collector needs. This coin's condition is one of the roughest of the batch. Heavy corrosion covers both sides, and the rim shows patchy thinning from years of wear. The back is even more dramatic. The wheat stalks are barely visible, and the lettering looks softened, almost melting into the background. Normally, a coin this worn would be something people toss aside without thinking twice, but steel cents are different, and a 1943 steel penny that survived this long, especially one that might hide a mint variety or strike problem under that rough surface, can still bring real surprises. The important thing with steel pennies is the possibility of an error hiding beneath the corrosion. Sometimes these worn examples carry off-center strikes, retained interior die breaks, or plating issues that only become obvious under magnification. A few 1943 pieces also show rare die clashes or a weak hub impression that makes the coin extremely unusual. Yes, any one of these can catapult the value from pocket change to life-changing. Now let's look at what collectors are paying. A heavily circulated 1943 steel penny in this condition normally sits in the $5 to $15 range for a basic example. But if this coin carries even a small mint error under the oxidation of something like a clipped planche or early die state doubling, collectors will still chase it. Serious buyers have paid over $2,000 for problem coins when the error is dramatic enough. And in full mint state condition, untouched by rust and time, certain 1943 steel pennies with special markers have sold for more than $300,000. A few rare overpunch varieties and striking mistakes have pushed past $400,000, turning a simple wartime penny into a headline sale. That's why coins like this are worth a second look. Even in rough shape, a 1943 steel cent has history built into it. These were struck when copper was redirected for ammunition and wiring, and every surviving piece carries that wartime story. When you add the chance of a rare variety or hidden error, the excitement climbs fast. All it takes is the right combination of date clarity, mint mark, and anomaly to turn one of these tired-looking pennies into a prize someone never expected to find. And just like that, we close out our search with a reminder that condition isn't everything. Sometimes a coin's value comes from what's hiding underneath the surface.